everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Welcome to the podcast. I hope that everybody had a magnificent Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. For those celebrating all of the other significant spiritual and religious holidays, some going all the way through till January 6th, I hope you are still in the wonderful swing of the joy of those holidays. Ours was great. We had a fantastic time with family and friends, and we just stretched it out over several days, and it was wonderful. So I'm really excited to be back in the seat here for our podcast because 2019 coming up is going to be a phenomenal year. It really is. 2019 is going to be a year that is just ripping the lid off of Reconstruction, because 2019 literally is the year of Reconstruction. So what does that mean for all of us? Well, we're going to see not only some really fantastic energies coming about in February. I know I've been talking about it, not to overhype it, yet there is an energetic wave coming in that brings equalization back to the energies of the United States of America. And so it'll be really interesting to actually see what that equalizing energy is. There's also a lot going on with the reconstruction of who we think we are as a nation and what we're going to bring forward. And it really is a big portion of reconstructing what we think is important to ourselves and to others during this time frame. Because if you really think about it, reconstruction at its base level is about building on top of a scaffold that already exists. So we're not talking about demolishing and putting a bomb under everything and blowing it all up and then building over the top of it. That's demolition. We're talking about reconstructing on a foundation that's already there. Because really, if you think about evolution and you think about nature doesn't very often come in and just annihilate everything. Once in a while it will, with say a fire. Back in the late 80s, millions of acres of Yellowstone Park were eaten by a giant forest fire. And that forest fire, of course, inspired many of the conifers, the pine trees, to open up the pine cones, because what happens is the fire heats the pine cones and they pop open and then all the seeds fall down to the ground and we reseed the forest that way. So periodically, nature will burn things down. We saw that in California recently, where the Woolsey fire and the Camp Fire ate a ton of California in the northern portions, which was just tragic. And I just got back from Los Angeles in the middle of December, where I was doing a shoot, and we were on location in some of those heavy burn zones, reading the energies out of the ground and what they meant for humanity and what the trees had to say. And it was really, really interesting. So yes, nature can take it down to a base level and wish us to grow back from that base level. However, even nature provides a starting point. As example, the pine cones that open up and drop their seeds. So when I talk about reconstruction and when these angels give me this energy signature that gets basically translated by yours truly here into reconstruction, it's not full demolition. It's not burning it all down. It's working with what's there and retrofitting it for a new time frame. And this is really important because going forward, we've been taught such a model in the old world of pure destruction, revolution, burn it down, build it in a new image. And all of that was the reflection of the imbalanced portion of the masculine time frame. And you will hear me say this till I'm blue in the face. I know y'all are probably so sick of it, you could throw up in your mouth a little bit there. Yet I will always uphold the divine masculine with as much reverence as I uphold the divine feminine, because both of these elements are deeply important to who we are as a species. Now, right now we're in a little bit of a wobbly space coming into the feminine time frame, and we're almost out of it. But we see the lid blow off of all the suppression and oppression that we've seen to the feminine. So we see, boom, this big blowout with the Me Too movement. And everybody's rightfully sensitive about the injustices that have been, thrust upon women over the last, 1,000 years or whatever. So we're seeing a little bit of, fire hose stuff coming out in the beginning part of the feminine time frame. And we're going to see that start to just kind of shake into place and mellow out just a little bit. Not the causes, not the messaging that equality is deeply important and that subjugation is out. Those things won't go away. Yet the fire hosey blah effect is going to be fading back just a bit as we go into 2019. And so the point of me saying that is I'm always going to point out where we have imbalances in the masculine and feminine, because this is a time frame of bringing balance. It's a time frame of bringing balance. And so it's not bad nor good. It's just that what we've seen in the old world model of the imbalanced masculine, which turned into the heavy patriarchal, the imbalance of eradicating a culture to be raised in the image of the eradicator, and to be brought back in the image of the eradicator. That is imbalance in the masculine to a hyper extent. The divine masculine says, hey man, we're all individuals. You don't have to be just like me. You be you, I'll be me, and let's work together and make something awesome. Then we're going to go have a beer, and then we're going to go to sleep. So, that's the divine masculine. The imbalanced masculine says, no, you all have to be me because I'm so insecure. I can't stand it because the ego has been hyperinflated and blah. So as we go into this new time frame, the new realm, the new world, the great mother, which has arisen of the mother, father, God aspect, not saying that Mother Mary is taking over for Father God. It's that the one that is all, the divine nature is both of these masculine and feminine modalities, and then many, many other variations in between. Okay, hear that? The idea of the being that is the all. Some people don't believe in a being that is the all, and that's perfectly cool. If you do subscribe to a collective consciousness or a large consciousness larger than humanity, that is part of humanity, that is even, whatever you want to call it, God. Mother, Father, God is Mother, Father, God, and many variations and mixing of modalities, applications, ideologies, gender, in between. And that's why during this time frame, we are seeing non-binary people come forward. How many of you do not know what non-binary means? I didn't. I was a boring garden variety lesbian. A boring cisgendered garden variety lesbian. And I had a little learning to do. I had some learning to do about how the development of souls coming in this time frame view categorization as well as the societal implications of being categorized as one gender or another. And there's all these souls coming in that just flat aren't digging being told, hey, guess what? You need to be a woman and have a baby and wear a dress, and you need to support your husband, and you need to have no voice, and you need to be the martyr. And there's people coming in who are like, hey, I don't want to support this sociological idea that I have to be the superhero and the Superman, and I have to be a dude with no emotions, and I have to be a John Wayne, and I put all my needs on the back burner to be a martyr, and I have to be hypersexualized in order to be accepted, and I have to make $1 million. There's a bunch of souls coming in, thank God, that aren't buying in to these consumerist cattle call ideals of who we need to be. And we see these folks who don't want to be called he or she. They want to be called they. Now, listen, folks. I understand there are some of you out there going, what? They? Come on now. Think back to when you were a teenager and you were talking about somebody in front of your mom or your dad telling a spicy story, and you didn't want to tip the gender off to the person who was, basically eavesdropping, because you didn't want to give away which of your friends was committing a grievance in the neighborhood. So you would say things like, well, I was talking to my friend and they were the one that got arrested the other day. Now, the friend you're talking to knows that it was, Cindy or Bob or whoever got arrested, but you say they got arrested. So when we talk about non-binary people, we are talking about folks who don't necessarily feel like they relate with the sociological identification or masculine or feminine, or quite frankly, we're learning now that in a lot of the chromosomal makeup on, not all, but a lot of non-binary people, they're not really genetically called to relate to the masculine or the feminine. They're not having that hyper-feminated, oh my God, I have to have a baby before I'm 25 or my head will blow off. They're not having that hyper-masculinated, I need to beat somebody in the head and drink a beer and then go have sex with 19 people and then go to bed. It's not, they're not called in those directions. They're called into this direction of being a soul first and a flesh being second. And a lot of them just don't relate with societally how they've watched their parents adopt gender roles. And some of these folks just genetically are not inclined toward a gender. So we have now come up with a term that is called non-binary. Think about it. It's binary is a 1 or a 0. It's one or the other. So someone who is non-binary decides, you know what? I don't really relate with either. And I know this is tough for we cisgendered people. I came to find out that that's a term, cisgendered, CIS. I don't know what it stands for. However, it's a term that means you're totally comfortable with your gender. So I'm completely comfortable with being a female. I don't say, gosh, I wish I was a male. I'm really happy being a female. I'm really happy being a female, married to another female, and she's happy being a female. And so we're just kind of two boring cisgendered middle-aged lesbians, which is pretty banal these days. So why am I bringing all this up? Because we're talking about the year of Reconstruction coming in 2019. And we are building upon the scaffold that exists, which means opening the mind to new ideals and new ideas. And we've put so much pressure on our millennials. I think this is really creepy, to be honest with you, and very imbalanced. That we now are like, oh, it's the millennials and they're going to save us. And the millennials, I love millennials. I also like Gen X. I also like the baby boomers. I love us all. I love the last 4 people left in the greatest generation. I love us all. So I think we are all part of the solution, and making any one of us responsible for the saving of all goes back to the old realm, the old world, which has fallen away, according to our angelic friends. So remember that. You can mourn the old world all you want, but she ain't coming back. She just ain't coming back. She ain't coming back. So have your cry over the days of John Wayne in the sunset. Have a cry over the world's biggest issue being whether or not we were still in a Cold War with Russia, because the old world is just not coming back, gang. It's not the nature of evolution. Right? So what does this mean? It's the year of Reconstruction in 2019. What does that mean? Well, it's really interesting. I did a big forum, big old sold out forum. I was very honored by that, actually. And that's the sold out part I put in here, not to say, God, look how amazing I am. I sold out a forum, although it did feel pretty good. But that's not why I included that comment. I included that comment because the forum sold out due to the fact that people are ready to hear about how to go about reconstructing. I included the comment sold out because it is a statement on how ready humanity is, how ready we are to get in there and go for it. So, one of the things that we're going to be doing in this year of Reconstruction is really looking at the conventions that we have subscribed to. And one of the biggest conventions we're going to be looking at is where we put our ideas of limitation. And oh man, is it going to get Old West? It's going to get so Old West because we're going to have people just completely freaking out over the fact that the world isn't how they remembered it. And it's not able to be pushed back into the box that they once identified. And so this gets a little Old West because whenever we are asked to defy convention, we are asked to redefine what the new modality or combined or agreed upon operating system would then be, right? Now think about this a minute. This gets super in depth. And again, the forum that I did on the year of Reconstruction was 3 hours long. And I was unable, here's the universe working for you, although it felt like it was working against me, but I think that's my own, human persecution complex going on there. I usually record my forums because I like to offer them for later download. And I could not get my mobile recorder to function. It wouldn't work. I changed the batteries. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't turn on. It wouldn't do anything. I brought it with me in hopes it would snap out of it from the trip from Bozeman to Billings. Maybe dropping in elevation 1,000, 1,500 feet would wake it up or something. I don't know what I thought was going to happen there. But anyway, the equipment that I normally use to record my forums didn't work. So I was not supposed to, apparently, I guess, capture that entire transmission of what the year of Reconstruction was going to be in one big piece. I guess it's going to get parceled out, like little teeny pieces will come out during this podcast, and perhaps more will come out later. So what I think is so interesting here, again, is that we are ready to reconstruct. We don't need to go the old world route of breaking everything down, burning it to the ground, and then rebuilding it in our own image. That's old world ego. Whose image? Well, for one thing, we are a collective species moving into a collective time frame. So it's impossible to build a society in one modality's image or one being's image. The closest we can get to is building a society that does not victimize, okay, and upholds the best attributes of everybody while holding a line in the sand to say, hey, gang, killing is bad, stealing is bad. Let's not create imbalances by killing and stealing and doing all those things that just rock the apple cart energetically, karmically, and societally. So obviously we have to have some real world, if you want to call them laws in place or whatnot, because there's not everybody in this plane of existence is going to come into a new plane of understanding in the year of Reconstruction. There's a lot of people whose job is to dig in and say, no, we're all going to die unless we go back in time. No, that's their job, okay? So when you see people freaking out and digging in, rather than judging them and saying, oh, what's the matter with you? How come you're not part of the new world? That judgy part that we are all A, capital double L, all of us are raised to be judgy in America, unless you are one of the very, 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 very few people that were raised not like that. But most people were raised with a judgment, ideology. So it's very hard not to judge when we see people digging their heels in the sand, or what we perceive them as digging their heels in the sand. However, in the year of Reconstruction, it's going to ask us, it's going to say, why are you judging those people? Why don't you take that energy and create an outside-the-box modality with it? For instance, it's really interesting. I've got a very, very dear friend, and her name is Penny Ronning. And Penny sits on the city council in Billings, Montana. And Penny is a brilliant human being. And she works with all sorts of folks who are victimized in human trafficking. And she's just a phenomenal pillar of standing in the gap for evolution and really tough, right action. Correct action so that victimization falls away. And this Reconstruction time frame demands that if we're going to step up, it is necessary for us to have some courage to stand in that gap for the evolution as the bridge is built, to stand in that gap and help people across the creek. As we continue to build the bridge over the creek, we have to have folks kind of helping folks over the stones in the water so people don't slip. And Penny Ronning is one of those people, in my opinion, who is in the creek up to her knees, just standing there, even though the water's cold, going, hey, I can help you over here. Come on, let's go. And why am I bringing up my friend Penny Ronning? Well, I'm bringing up my friend Penny Ronning because she put a post up in a particular group in Facebook asking for discussion what in the heck we could do to ask our Congress people to basically for them to do something differently regarding so many of our systems that are just falling apart in the country right now. One of them being the fact that we have children who are dying in these detention camps along the border. So Penny had put up this particular post, and she wasn't condemning any one person. She was just simply saying, wow, it was a snip from CBS News or something, where someone had gotten on and said, we need to do something completely different because the old world isn't working anymore, in essence. And it got me thinking, I wrote this post back about if I was president or a congressperson, this is what I would do. And it was so long that I had to break it up in 3 different sections so Facebook would actually post it. But, it really got me to thinking about what is necessary to change or to bring evolution or to be the stewards or the gateways of evolution during this time frame. And one person's change, you have to remember this, gang. We all have to remember this. One person's change is another person's end of the world. Okay? So it is good to be sensitive about the fact that my idea of a utopian world is probably a personal hell for many people, and vice versa. So it's not about me imposing Danielle Egnew's idea of the world out there, because that's not going to work. I mean, well, it worked for me, and maybe a few of you, but there's a lot of people who would not be happy with my idea of the world. So again, it's not about me creating the world in my image or you creating the world in your image. It's about collectively reconstructing an environment in which the best ideas and parts of ideas are factored together so that there is no reason to dominate or to victimize in order to get one's point across. I mean, think about this. Think about it. What is reconstruction? It is not tearing it down and building it all with brand new struts, bought only from one contractor and jackhammering it out, all of the concrete to just use a brand new brand by one other contractor. This is about using what's there and repurposing it and rebuilding on top of it. And this is how we go into this feminine time frame and maximize the energies of this time frame. Because the feminine time frame wants us to use what's already there, recycle it, reuse it, come up with something new, come up with something genius. How many times did your mom or your grandma, when you were growing up, kind of come in and be the tiebreaker by coming up with a brand new amazing idea where everybody got something and it was a win, and all the fighting kids got sent to the different corners of the house and everybody felt better? A lot of times. Sometimes mom had to just shut it all down and send everybody to their rooms. So, I mean, being in the feminine time frame isn't just about peace, love, and harmony. It is, however, about collective solutions and absolutely fiercely holding the perimeter for collective solution making. Now, by fiercely holding the perimeter, that doesn't mean oppressing. It means just really holding the bar up high and saying, no, we're not going to go back to this old outmoded way of hating one another and my way or your way or the highway. And on this podcast, I talk a tremendous amount about the damaging effects of consumerism on the American psyche. And what started out as just trying to sell people stuff through fear, you better buy health insurance or you might, leave your family destitute and on an island of nothing for the rest of their life. Or you better buy these beauty products, ladies, or you'll never get married. Or you better buy that fancy car, guys, or you'll never get married. I mean, the damaging effects of consumerism on the morale, on the self-image, on how we even place our goals as Americans, that has been such a twisted, wow. I mean, that would be like a multi-series podcast to get into that. Yet when we look at the year of Reconstruction, we are literally being asked, how do we deconstruct these ideas that are no longer functional in an interconnected world? It can't be my way or the highway. It can't be all Democrats or all Republicans. It can't be all peace, love, and harmony, hug a tree, and just sit and meditate in the woods. It can't be all racists oppressing people and burning crosses in the yard. We can't be one way because it doesn't work. And the feminine time frame says, okay, look, it's wonderful to be peace, love, and harmony, and it's wonderful to go out there and meditate. Yet also make sure that you're bringing the, separating the recycling and bringing the trash to the dumpster. Otherwise, your kitchen smells. We have to be a multi-timbral being. I really can't think of any upsides of racism, so I can't really bring that example back because, again, that falls under victimization and fear, and that's something that we're working on in the feminine time frame, is how do we not hate the haters? How do we not hate the haters? How do we bring the haters back into the fold and say, you know why you hate? Because you hate yourself most of all. Why do you hate yourself so much? Why do you not believe in yourself so much that you're blaming an entire race group for your issues? And I honestly do think that the ability to hyper-focus on any one given anything to blame it for all things, that really, if we're to look at psychology, that's a delusional mindset. So I am not a mental health professional, gang. Yet if I were, I could probably link that to some sort of deep mental illness. To say one group of people is all, I'm deluded enough to believe that all of my problems belong to this one group. That really, to me, really reeks of some kind of a mental inclusion, shall we say. So during this feminine time frame, do we judge that? Let's just say, okay, and I'm not trying to erase racism, gang. I'm not trying to make excuses for people. Let's say for the discussion in this podcast, because we're talking about recreation, okay? We're talking about reconstruction in 2019. So let's just say for the sake of discussion that in some cases, being a deeply racist person or whatever is a mental illness, or it's some form of hyper-focusing disorder like an anxiety disorder or an obsessive compulsive disorder or whatever. So in those cases, judging that person for some wiring in the mind that obviously is not conducive to balance probably isn't going to cure anything. It's not going to cure society. It's not going to help that person. Obviously, I think a majority of racism is learned. I think it's fear-based and it's other things. Yet I'm using this as an example to challenge many of our preconceived notions about, well, how do we take somebody who's racist and fold them back into the collective in a way that's productive? Because that's what we're being asked to do in the year of Reconstruction. We're being asked not to just marginalize and shut people out because we may not understand the way they think. Now, obviously, again, I can't stress it enough. The feminine time frame, it really puts the kibosh on victimizing. So in the year of Reconstruction, we are asked, how do we go forward and build without victimizing the victimizers, without becoming the oppressors to the oppressors? How do we enact what we would call justice, which really the universe looks at as karma or cause and effect or equal balance? How do we be the stewards of holding a space for equal balance without becoming the same headhunter that headhunted us once? So by God, we're going to turn around and do it right back to them. It gets challenging, doesn't it? It gets challenging not to produce a world in our own image. I mean, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it as well, because we are all only able to perceive that which comes through our own lens. I really work hard to bring through messages that are not of my own lens. You know, I don't always have such a high-mindedness when I read horrific news talking about awful things that have happened to transgendered people or people of color, because people have fear, they are racist, they're homophobic. I'm not always high-minded about that. So a lot of these messages that you hear me bring forward about how are we going to step into a place of not high-mindedness, but wide-mindedness, those aren't always necessarily mine, because I'm not always that wide-minded. Yet my job is to pass on differing perspectives. And a lot of that has to do with the amalgamated perspective moving into 2019's year of Reconstruction, because that's going to help us get through some pretty tough stuff, okay? So when we look at the year of Reconstruction and next year, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot of rebuilding. And we are going to be calling upon those who have amazing ideas that are really outside the box to come forward in leadership. So if you're listening to this podcast today and you're somebody sitting back going, God, what difference could I make? I mean, I don't want to run for political office because those people are crazy. That system is ridiculous. It's broken. It's payola. People are locked into their parties. You know, I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to run for school board because you got old, you know, Mrs. McGillicuddy over there who's been on the school board since 1910. And every time she opens her mouth to talk, a moth flies out, but it's an angry moth, and I just don't want to deal with it. You know, I mean, we put ourselves into these negatives, right? And instead of doing that, what would happen if we realized that this is 2019's year of reconstruction, which means that the outside of the box modalities are the way upon which all is to be built. What if we were, instead of going, oh, that Mrs. McGillicuddy and her 500-year-old moth coming out her mouth, maybe instead to say, wow, Mrs. McGillicuddy's been on that school board before they even had electricity. And I bet she's seen a lot. And I know she kind of digs in on certain concepts. But let me sit down with her and I'll bring a moth translator and we'll figure out why exactly she adheres to these principles and what she found value in these principles for, because then we can see if we can translate those to the new world and bring the best of the old forward, because the old can't go forward. So this honors Mrs. McGillicuddy's time on the school board without devaluing her and saying, oh my gosh, you're a senior, you don't know what you're talking about. That's a very disrespectful way to look at our elders. And I'm using the analogy of the moth coming out, partially to be funny. But also we look at our older generations anymore, and we're starting to get real weird about this. And I'm not so sure I am in agreement with this. I'm not actually. Where we're like, well, this generation doesn't know how to handle the new world. They need to get out of Congress because they don't know what's happening. Hey, I think experience is a good thing. I do think that if you are an individual who is of a certain age and the evolving world is no longer an interesting topic, and to maybe step out of that role. Yet for those who have a little bit of tread off the tires, we need you in place. We need you in place because you've seen every idiotic, stupid thing that's ever happened between now and then. And you've seen how we've recovered from it. And you can also look ahead and apply that wisdom and say, oh, okay, I remember this. This didn't work. This did work. Now let's get some new beautiful voices coming in from our youth and let's blend them all together. Again, reconstructing a modality. This is very important. So if you're somebody thinking about, well, God, I'd love to make a difference, but I just don't even know how I would, because what I want to do has never been done before. Well, congratulations. You are hearing the call of the universe that is asking many people to step forward in ways they normally wouldn't have, with ideas that maybe we've all thought about, but nobody's done anything about because we've determined through marketing and consumerism in America, fear-based marketing and consumerism, that certain things aren't electable. Don't you just love that term? That's not electable. That person's not electable. Yeah, they are. We now know, based upon our current president of the United States, that honest to God, anyone is electable. And I would really sincerely, honestly like to thank Donald Trump, and I mean this, for presenting such a staggering example of the fact that literally anyone can be president of the United States. And I think that his role has been unbelievably magnificent in where we're going. Now, I am not necessarily a fan of his choices or a lot of his personal politics, yet if we take my feelings of it out of it and I look at it from an energetic perspective, man, this guy, look at him go. Shoot, somebody like me could run for president right now, and it wouldn't be that weird. I mean, you'd still have your people running out of the woodwork saying, well, you can't elect a lesbian, or somebody saying you can't elect a woman, or somebody saying you can't elect somebody who's never had any political experience at all. Except now we know you can elect somebody that's had no political experience. You could have somebody say, well, Danielle Egnew, you could never be president because you've never run a company. But now we know that having a CEO who's run a company and having that person who is really has the same power granted to them by the board of their company, to a degree as would a king or queen, to be able to say, do this, I'm delegating it, it's my final last word, and nobody can really argue with them unless the board removes them. But usually they have a pretty good working relationship with the board, or they've bought the board. So we take Donald Trump. Donald Trump is doing exactly what Donald Trump would do as a CEO, as president. He's indignant when he's told he can't do something. He doesn't understand when he can't give one executive order and have it be the God's rule, because as a CEO, that's the way it goes. And then you delegate it to have your word become action. We do have a monarchy in America. It's called business. It's called big business. And we have people who will never, ever break through those glass ceilings in big business because just like a monarchy, you're not born into it. This is why America used to be such a phenomenal example of the land of shining waters, which now it's all flint. Look what we've done. Gosh, gang, we got to get reconstructing here and bring it back around because America used to be a shining example for where you could come and make your dreams come true. And we're still that country. We are still those people. We are disenfranchised and we're fearful. And we've had our prefrontal cortexes eroded with corn syrup. Yet we are still those people in spirit that believe that we can build something collectively amazing. So I would like to personally thank Donald Trump, even though he's not my personal choice for president, for setting an example that absolutely everything is possible in the year of Reconstruction. So, are you sitting out there going, oh man, I'd love to run for Congress, but it freaks me out, or I want to start a whole new community movement. To heck with the government, they're insane. I want to start a whole new community movement. And in my community, I'm going to call it, I don't know, Janice's Ladybugs. And what we're going to do is we're going to get out there and make sure that we import ladybugs and put them on plants. And we enter bees into the community by keeping honey and keeping, apiaries. And we allow those honeybees to go and pollinate so that our local crops have good yields. I mean, whatever it is, do it. Because nothing is too outside the box in the year of Reconstruction. Reconstruction. We're going to use the bare bones of what's already there. And we're going to tear down that rotty old stinky sheetrock with the god-awful floral wallpaper all stained from too many pot parties in 1970. We're going to tear it all down and we're going to build on top of what remains. So we're not going to burn it all down. We're not going to eradicate. We're going to remodel. And we're going to strengthen. And we're going to make it amazing in a way that we've never seen it be amazing before. And that's going to involve many of us stepping forward with our visions for an incredible place to be, an incredible world. And if you think about this, you can bring change sometimes, even if you're not the person selected for the job, even if you're not the one elected, even if you're not the one appointed. You bringing in that incredible idea, you could be what reconstructs your corner of the universe where you live. I mean, take me running for mayor. Okay, so I run for mayor of Billings, Montana in 2017. I didn't make it through the primary. There were 7 of us running. I came in 4th. I got 8.2% of the vote. And me and another gal were the only females to have run for mayor in the last 50 years. And me and Angela Semino, we stepped up, both of us, to run for mayor. Now, I didn't win. I didn't even make it through the primary. The 2 fellas who made it through the primary were exactly the 2 fellas who you'd expect to make it through the primary in Billings, Montana. 2 fellas who we couldn't announce our political affiliation in Billings because you don't do that. The mayor is a non-politically affiliated post, supposedly. But both of these fellas affiliated with the Republican Party. They were both white males in their 50s. So that's exactly the demographic that's going to get elected in Billings. However, my slogan was lead with love. And because I talked about how we could make changes, because I had no desire to get in there and push people out of the way when I was running for mayor, I wanted to uphold all of us. And I wanted all of us to bring forward our best ideals for the community so that the community could make their best decisions. Okay? Because I held the space, I was the steward for leading with love and respect for my fellow folks that I ran with. Nobody got nasty during that entire campaign. And there were some folks running who had run for things before, whose whole modality was to get as nasty and rotten as you possibly could get. But I came out and said, we're going to lead with love. Come on, gang. I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to push you out. I'm here to present an idea. Now you present your idea. Now let's have faith in the voters that they pick the idea that they like the best. Come on. Now I didn't become the mayor of Billings, Montana. Yet because I stepped up and I was willing to hold a space for that dignity and that love, all of the other folks that ran in that same mayor's race with me, notice I didn't say my opponents. They weren't my opponents. They were beautiful people who might have had different ideas than I had, but their ideas were just as valid for many of the people in our city at that time. So what did they do? They got excited about it and they stepped forward and they led with love too. And as a matter of fact, the guy who ended up winning, Bill Cole, actually graciously turned around to me during a forum where all of the mayor candidates came out and announced what they were going to be offering for the city of Billings. It was in a park. And Bill turned right around and said, it is important in this time frame that we do. And he looked right at me and kind of bowed his head. He said, lead with love. And Bill wasn't trying to steal my idea. He looked right at me and nodded and people clapped. He was deferring because he knew it's what we needed to do to move forward. And I appreciated that because I was pretty sure Bill was going to win anyway. Yet what I'm saying is there's got to be somebody who can step up and hold a space when we're reconstructing for beauty, for working together, for a modality that is different. And I love doing that. You know, Donald Trump stepped forward and never expected to win. And I remember watching him in the debates. And there were 50,000 people that were stepping up for the Republican nod for president. I found that so fascinating. It was like the mayor's race in Billings. There was 7 of us. I mean, this was just an open playing field for the Republicans back in 2016. And I remember watching Donald Trump speak. And obviously, I am wired to translate information and to read energies. And I remember watching him talk. And I thought, this man doesn't want to be the president. He never wanted to be the president. He's kind of having fun with it now, even though he kind of hates it and wishes he wasn't the president, but he's doing what he can. And most of the time he hides in Mar-a-Lago. So he didn't want to be president. And we had, as we all know, there were some favors pulled and some, oh my God, between gerrymandering and Russia and just the gullible American public and people who didn't vote. And it was a perfect storm of apathy versus misinformation versus let's wiggle the system enough that people don't notice. And here's Donald Trump and he's president. And they went to interview Mr. Trump. And my God, I'll never forget this. I sat there. My heart was breaking for this guy. And I got the nervous giggles. Do you ever get those? Like the kind you used to get in church? And it's like super embarrassing because the more you try not to laugh, you're laughing because it's horrible. So I'm watching Donald Trump on television and they're interviewing him. Congratulations, President-elect Trump. And that poor man. It looked like somebody beat him on the side of the head with a 2x4 for 20 minutes straight before that interview. He just stared into space. And his mouth was hanging open like a codfish. And he was like, thank you. Yes, thank you. And they said, are you ready to be the president, Donald Trump? I would like to congratulate Hillary and I think I'll do a good job as president. And I sat there and read that man and I thought, oh my God, this poor dude is like, what in the hell just happened here? I was just trying to get better ratings for a better TV show. What in the hell? I have to give away my company. I got to figure out how to give it to my kids and have nobody notice. This isn't cool. And so when we saw this though, in a way, now I know I'm making a big leap, but this is the year of Reconstruction and it's about looking at things outside the box. So go here with me. So here's me leading with love in America, in this little middle town, whitey, tidy town, Billings, Montana, the lesbian psychic woman running for mayor. And we've got Donald Trump who wins the presidency a year before, which is what inspired me to run for mayor. Because if he can win president, well, I could be mayor of Billings. I mean, come on. Literally, way weirder things have happened than that. So what do we have there? Well, Donald Trump ran and won, which means somebody like me steps up to run for office, which means that I fearlessly hold the space to lead with love, which means that in Billings, Montana, the person or people who would negative campaign chose not to, because then they're going to look like, if I may just speak very plainly, a complete asshat. If you're the one who is not leading with love and all the other candidates are leading with love and you're being, Mr. Negative Campaigner or Ms. Negative Campaigner, asshat, right? So it dissolved the need to compete in a negative way in Billings, and the entire narrative in Billings, Montana changed. The entire narrative. Now, look, this isn't about me doing glory days or patting myself on the back. It was hard to run for mayor. It was really scary. It was a really slow, weird energy signature that made me want to just beat my own head in with a shovel. It was awful in a lot of ways. It was terrifying to put myself out there and say, oh my gosh, are they going to, see a bankruptcy on my record from 2003 when I moved to LA and had to switch careers and things didn't go so well. And it's true, I had a bankruptcy on my record way back. I had $7,000 in credit card debt that I could not pay when I first moved to LA. And I had to declare bankruptcy on $7,000 because I could not pay it. And it was the most horrible feeling ever. It was horrible. And there I'm standing in the court in California. And the judge is looking at me going, Miss Egnew, you owe $7,000. Are you sure you want to declare bankruptcy on this? And I said, I can't pay it. It was in collections. It was horrible. I was trying to throw little teeny bits and pieces at it, but if you'll notice, our collection system doesn't help you. It was really terrible. And the judge said, you realize that most people who come in here have $350,000, $1 million. Why are you declaring this $7,000? And I said, because I am truly bankrupt, because it was the truth. I said, and I sometimes I can't even make the $10 payments. And the judge looked at me, didn't quite know what to do, but I paid my money, and they said, well, this is going to go on your record. I said, I know. I said, however, it's true. I am bankrupt and I cannot pay this. I said, and if it goes on my record for 7 years, it's the truth. I can't pay it. And I will just have to do better in 7 years. And the judge just very begrudgingly issued this bankruptcy, not because he didn't want to, issue it to me, but it's like, geez, you're ruining your credit for 7 years over $7,000. But the fact was, it was the truth. I literally was bankrupt. I did not have a penny to my name, hardly a penny at that time frame. And so I kept, it was crazy. So why am I bringing this up? Well, geez, I'm running for office, right, in Billings, Montana. And I'm like, oh God, somebody's going to find out about this bankruptcy. And I thought to myself, so what if they do? It's true. It happened. You were that broke, at one time in your life. And things were that bad. So what? They don't want to elect you for mayor, whatever. Why am I telling you all this? Why does it sound like I'm talking about politics? Because I'm not actually talking about politics. I'm talking about overcoming shame and fear to step up and hold the perimeter, to be the steward of reconstructing by bringing forward outside the box modalities that you know in your guts and I know in my guts are the right thing to do, yet we've been too afraid to step forward with it because we've been too afraid we'd look stupid or we'd be judged. Or somebody would drag something embarrassing out of our closet that oh my gosh, we declared bankruptcy. Oh no. We're so afraid, and so we don't speak out. Yet the year of Reconstruction asks us, how long is it going to take for you to bring those amazing outside the box ideas forward? The universe has given us every single example we possibly could want in America right now. Look at our government. Whether you agree with Mr. Trump or not, he has represented that anything is physically possible in positions of leadership in this country. And we've also seen what happens when we get a person into a position of leadership who isn't cut out for that type of leadership. Mr. Trump is not cut out to be a president. He's cut out to be a CEO only if he is in a protective environment where the money comes from other places. Now, as president, the money comes from other places. It comes from taxpayers. Yet as president of the United States, or as any great leadership position dictates, we must live the example to truly inspire people. And Mr. Trump, he can't live the example because he's not the example. And he even knew that when he, quote, won, end quote. He knew he wasn't the example. That's why he looked like somebody beat him in the head with a 2x4 when the news was interviewing him. That poor guy was so afraid. He was so afraid. We can say a lot of nasty things about Donald Trump, yet he's not completely numb to who he really is. He knows who he is. And he knew there was no way that he was going to be able to be presidential. He used to joke. I pulled all of this out of his auric field when he was giving that interview. He used to joke with friends about how that is a job that nobody could ever pay him to do because you got to kiss the butts of everybody else. And your hands are tied and you don't get anything done and you get blamed for everything. He didn't want to be president. He just, in his impulsiveness and his hubris, decided, what the hell, I'll make a big splash and stir it up a little bit and I'll get a big TV show and some book deals and blah, 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 blah. It's funny how the universe will utilize our ambitions. In 2019, the year of Reconstruction, allow your ambition to be fueled by enthusiasm for reconstruction. Allow yourself to be challenged, to dig deeply, to connect with those you normally wouldn't, so that we can come together in all areas for the best of this world. This is literally what we're being asked to do. And so if you can use somebody like myself as an example, okay, and I know I bring this example up a lot. It's because I don't really have other awesome examples of stepping up to do something that scared me to death, that changed things that I never thought they would be changed by my action, except for this mayor thing is the most recent. I can think of a couple other ones, but the mayor thing is the most recent because politics are so taboo, right? So are you somebody that wants to bring change, yet you fear that what you want to do would not be received? The year of Reconstruction asks us to put away our fear and shame and to think outside the box. When I ran for mayor, I would have really enjoyed that job. I really don't mind taking some hits when people are angry about smaller concepts because I'm holding the perimeter for the larger picture. I actually, weirdly, it's never fun to have people make fun of you or be mean to you. Yet I know if what I'm doing is holding that perimeter and being the steward of that space, it's not about me anyway. So call me names. Say I was bankrupt. By the way, the bankruptcy thing never came up, by the way. That was my own fear, right? When I ran for mayor. And I don't think it would have come up even if I made it through the primaries because the people of Billings just aren't exactly those people to want to go dig in for gross stuff. Yet, say I ran for president. That would probably come up or whatever. Yet, let's exercise our desire and our enthusiasm to step outside of ourselves and hold the perimeter for something larger than us. Because you know what it's going to do? It's going to give you courage to get past those areas of shame and fear in your psyche that have been so summarily pounded in by a consumerism culture that is depending on you to live in shame and fear and regret, so you will buy more stuff to feel better about yourself. If we can hold that space to overcome that fear and that shame, and what can drive us to overcome that fear and that shame is holding a space for the many to also overcome their fear and their shame, guess what we have? We have a collective team working for the same thing. And that collective team environment will give you strength, and it'll give me strength. It'll give all of us strength to come out and get past weird, ridiculous fears that we've had. And we've had them in place for good reason. Geez, shame was a pretty powerful currency in the old world. It still is. So let's work to devalue that currency. Let's cause deep inflation in the shame realm. And instead, let's drive up the market value of trust, of ingenuity, of working together, of repurposing people and connecting people with what they have to offer the world. One of the reasons why Donald Trump won is because a lot of folks, not everybody, but a lot of folks who voted for Mr. Trump were people who felt like they didn't have a voice. So the big fat bully made them feel heard and seen and, go fight for me, man. Geez, my heart broke for all those people. I mean, there's a lot of people that voted for him because he had an R after his name and whatever. He's not my favorite, but he's who we got, so we'll just go for it. That was most people I know that voted for Mr. Trump. Yet, if we look at him not as the adversary, but as a teacher, if we look at our own fear of being shamed, not as a humiliation, yet as a teacher, if we look at our own potential to shine a light on all of the amazing traits in that individual who felt so silenced that they had to go vote for this bully personality in order to be seen, like literally, like they had to take their carabiner and snap it onto his belt loop so they could be drugging the dust way behind him, but it was better than nothing because at least they could say, well, that's my candidate, and I have a voice now. What would happen if we went to those folks who felt that unheard and said, hey, I hear you'd like to be heard. What is it you want to say? Now, you know that when you have a suppressed anybody, the first thing that's going to come out is their wounds, okay? So when we sit with people who've been suppressed, oppressed, repressed, any of the presses, the first thing that's going to come out is a fire hose of grossness. The things they hate, the people they want to kill and wound, they're going to come out like a spitting, angry animal because that's how they feel. They feel like they've been tied to a log and kicked in the face over and over. So you're probably not going to get a happy, puffy unicorn diving over a rainbow at you when you first start this conversation. Yet, the unicorn for that person probably wouldn't be super authentic, right? So we want to hear, why? What do you bring into the world? And be patient with the spew of the wounds, because the wounds must come out first before the beauty of that person is able to feel safe enough to come forward. And sometimes that person just isn't going to feel safe enough. So what if you were the person that held the space? What if you became the steward for believing in that person? What if you held a vast space, truly believing that every human being has something magnificent to offer, even those who have been twisted and abused and crushed and smashed? What if you had the strength to hold that space for what was in all of us, which is the need to be respected and the need to love? What if you were that person in your community? What if you led with love? And what if it changed an entire election? And what if the fact that you stepped up to hold that much faith in humanity changes everything? And the person or people or corporate entity that would have gotten a stranglehold in your community by using fear and negative advertising couldn't do it because you held the perimeter for love. Because that's what happened in Billings, Montana. It's what happened. There was a candidate running for mayor there, along with all of us, who was heavily backed by the Republican Party. And that candidate and I actually got along quite well one-on-one. Yet that candidate's modality was to get pretty nasty in the trenches. And there was a lot of money behind that candidate. But because we all chose to lead with our best examples, including that same candidate that normally came out with teeth bared and with a blade of shining, not literally, but we're talking politically. Even that candidate was really happy to not have to become that person or choose to be that person to win. And actually the candidate didn't win. That candidate didn't win because negativity was never allowed a space. So did I win? No. Do I feel super positive about the space I held? Yes, because it made a giant difference. And who knows if that difference is going to keep going in Billings, Montana. That was several years ago. Who knows? Yeah, what if it does? Does it make it any less important of an action that I put forward if I didn't become mayor? No. I'm pretty proud of my 8.2%. Actually, I've never run for office. I was feeling pretty good about that when I read that Bernie Sanders, after the third time he ran, got 6-point-something% of the electorate. I was like, well, I guess I don't feel terrible about this. The point I'm making, again, is not about me. The point I'm making is that in the year of Reconstruction, if you wish to look at this podcast or me, or even Donald Trump as an example, bring forward your out-of-the-box ideas, because it is your out-of-the-box ideas that are going to change the world, and have a fearless commitment to stepping forward and hold that space in trust and hope that you holding that space with discernment, with boundaries, with eyes open, yet holding the space with the courage to be able to withstand the initial blow of somebody's wounds as they're blowing off all their stuff. And you kind of shake it off like a cartoon character getting slimed in Ghostbusters and say, okay, now that you got that out of your system, what do you got under that? You're going to watch that happen, and I'm going to watch that happen. We all are going to watch that happen in droves in 2019, 20, 21, and beyond. 2019 is the year of reconstruction. Let us reach past our fear and our shame to begin to build upon the structures that are there, repurposing all that is good and useful. And even taking that which has been wounded to learn from it and give it value in our structure moving forward. For everything that we touch in this new realm is usable for healing and for evolution. I love all of you. Go forward this week and bring your stewardship for a new realm into the world. We'll see you next week.